Hey guys, what's going on? Emmanuel here, back to another tutorial. Now in today's tutorial, we're going to learn how to add validation to a form in a React.js application. Now in my screen right now, you can see we have this sign up form right here. When I click on sign up, you're going to notice that the form is going to say the name field is required, the email field is required, and the password field is required. Now when I type in the name, my name inputs Emmanuel, and click on sign up, I'm going to notice that the name error has disappeared, and when I have the email field is required and the password field is required. If I type in an email that's not a valid email address, I just type in a bunch of numbers and a bunch of letters and click on sign up, and I'm going to notice that the email input is going to say enter a valid email address. So you have to actually enter a valid email address before you can submit this form. So I can get rid of this and just type in a valid email address here@gmail.com. Then click on sign up. You're going to notice that the email error has disappeared. And for the password input, when I type in a password that is not up to 6 characters, you're going to say password must be at least 6 characters. So until I type in a password that's actually greater than 6 characters and click on sign up, that's only when the form is going to be submitted. Now you're going to learn how to do all this in this tutorial. Now if you're excited about this tutorial, smash on the like button and leave a random comment below. It's going to help the YouTube algorithm push this tutorial to more people who are going to find it helpful. And also it's actually going to mean a lot to me if you smash on that like button. And lastly, if you've not subscribed, ensure you do that and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss my next tutorial. Now we're not going to be starting the form validation from absolute scratch. I already have this form styled up here with Tailwind CSS. Now if you like to check out the video I made where I teach you how to style a React form with Tailwind CSS from scratch, I'm going to leave a link to that video in the description below. Right now on our screen we have our form. When I type into this form right now, I click on sign up and type into the password field. I click on sign up. You're going to notice that the form gets submitted. And also when I type on the name field and in my email field, I just type a random number in and I click on sign up. You're going to notice that the form gets submitted, but my password field was not filled up and my email field I was filling in a number. So let's start validating this form. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually convert this input form to a React component. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to create a state. I'm going to say const name set name is equals to useState, and this is going to take a string. Then I can come down to my input field and I can say the value of this input is going to be name. Then I'm going to save that. Now what I just did is that I connected this name state we created to this input form right here. So whatever value we have in our state is going to be the value of our input. So if I come up here and I type in Emma here and save that, you're going to notice our input form is going to have a value of Emma. Now in this input right now, when I try to edit this value or type a new value or actually clear out this value, it's not going to work. Now the reason I cannot edit any value in this input right now is because I've not added an event handler to this input. So let's do that. So on change on this input, now when this input changes, when there's any change in this input, I want to run an arrow function that's going to take an event. Then I want to set my name state to event.target.value. I'm going to save that. Now when I return to my input, when I type in here, you're going to see it gets updated. So I want to clear off this Emma right here in this state. I'm going to save that. Now what's happening is that anytime I type on this input, hello, this unchanged handler is going to fire. So if I type hash, it's going to set the name to event.target.value, which is hash. So our state is going to be hash. If I type the letter E, it's going to set the name to HE. And it's also going to be the same thing when I type L and O. Anytime I type into this input, this unchanged event handler is going to be fired. It's going to fire this function. It's going to set the name to the current value of this input. Now let's do the same thing for our email and password field. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to say const email set email, and it's going to be equals to useState. Then const password equals to useState. So you can scroll down to our email input right here. In our email input, I'm going to say the value is going to be email. Then for the password, I'm going to say the value is going to be password. Now as usual, when I try to type on this password input, it's not going to work, or we've not added the onChange event handler to this input. So I want to come over and I want to say onChange of this. I want to find an arrow function. I want to take an event. Then I want to set the email to event.target.value. I'm going to do the same thing for the password. I'm going to say set password. Now I can type in my password input and get stored in my password state. Now what we are going to do next is that we are going to try to capture the event when this form is submitted. So to do that, I want to come to my form right here. I want to say onSubmit. I want to run the function called handle submit. I want to come up here and actually create that function. I'll say const handle submit is equals to an arrow function. Now this form is going to take an event. Now when we hover over this event right there, you can see parameter implicitly has any TypeScript. Now TypeScript is angry and throwing an error because we've not told TypeScript the type of event this is. So we have to tell TypeScript the type of event. So we're going to say this is a React.form events. Now our TypeScript error is gone. Now in my form right now, anytime I type something and I click on sign up, you're going to notice that the form gets submitted, and that's the default behavior of forms in HTML. So we have to prevent that default behavior. So I'm going to come here in this function. I'm going to say events.prevent default. Now when I type on this input and I try to submit it, you're going to notice that the form is not going to be submitted because we've prevented the default behavior of the form. Now that we have converted our inputs to React components and we've also prevented the default behavior of our form, let's start actually adding validation to this form. Now next, I want to create a state that's going to store our errors. I want to come down and say const errors. Sorry, spell errors currently. Then set errors is equals to the useState hook from React. Then this is going to take an object. First of all, it's going to take the name error. Then the email error is obviously, they are obviously going to be empty strings for now. Then it's going to take the password error. Then inside my undo submit function, I'm actually going to create another object. I will say const new errors. And these are the errors I'm going to be using to update my error state. First, an object of errors. So first of all, it's going to take the name error. Then it's going to take the email error. Then the password. Sorry, spell password correctly. Password error. Now let's start validating our name field. I'm going to come down and say if name. Now this if name statement right now is going to return true only if we have a value inside our name field. But we don't want to run this if statement if we have a value. We want to run this if statement if our input is empty. So if this is going to return true, I want to negate it. I want to say if no name, which means if our input field or our input state is empty, that's only when I want to run this function. So let's test this. I'm going to say if there's nothing in our input, I just want to alert input empty. Sorry, empty. So when I click on this sign up right now, you're going to notice that it's going to alert input empty. But when I type on this input, it's not going to alert anything. But when I take off these values, our input is empty. It's going to alert input empty. So this if statement is only going to fire when our input is empty. Now we're actually going to face another challenge right now. If in this form I click on this and I put in like space, then I click on sign up, you're going to notice that input empty is not going to be fired. Now what's happening is that I don't really have a value in my input. I'm just using blank spaces, but the form is still going to be submitted if I use blank space. So I want to capture those blank spaces. I want to ensure that a user cannot submit this name input when they didn't type a value into it. Now to do that, I'm going to come over and instead of name, I'm going to say I want to trim out the blank spaces. Trim. Now when I save that, when I use blank spaces and click on sign up, we're going to notice it say input empty. Now if this input is empty, what I want to do is I want to set this new errors state, right? New errors dot the name. I want to set it to this string right here. Name is required, or the name field is required. Let me just say the name field is required. Then down here, I just want to set my error state to new errors. Then I'm going to scroll down to my name input. Underneath, I'm going to put a p tag right here. Then this p tag, you want to output the errors dot name. I'm going to save that. Now you're going to notice that when I click on sign up without actually typing any value to this name, you're going to notice I'm going to say the name field is required. Now let's actually start this up a bit with Tailwind. First of all, I'm going to say this is going to have a text align of center, text center. I'm going to center it. Then I'm going to give it a color of red, text red. I want a dark red color. Then font semi-bold. I don't want it too bold, just semi-bold. And lastly, text XM. I'm gonna save that. Now when I click on sign up, you can see our error right here. The name field is required. Now let's validate our email and password field too. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to say if not email dot trim. If our email field is empty, then I want to say new errors dot email is equals to the email field is required. Then down here, I'm just going to copy this p tag right here. I'm going to scroll underneath this email inputs. Then instead of outputting the errors.name, I want to output the error.email. I'm going to save that. And when I click on sign up, you can notice right now the email field is required. The name field is required. Now we don't just want to validate and check if the email field is empty. We also want to check that if the user typed in the correct email address, a valid email address. Right now, when I click on a bunch of numbers right now, which are obviously not a valid email address, I click on sign up, you are going to notice that the email errors disappears. Now let's actually validate if a user is entering the right email address. So I'm going to come back to this function right here. So I'm going to say if. Now the only way to check if an email address is a valid email address is to use regular expression. So I'm going to paste in a regular expression right here. So I'm going to paste that right here. I'm going to say dot test email. Now this conditional statement right here, if is going to return true when this email, the email we put in our input matches this regular expression, but we only want it to return true when it does not match. We only want to run this if when it does not match. So I'm going to negate this right here. Now this if block of code is only going to run when the email the user entered into the input does not match this regular expression, which means it is not a valid email address. Then when that happens, I want to set my email errors to enter a valid email. Now when I click on sign up, you're going to notice that the name field is required, the email field is required. Then when I type something that is not a valid email address, just type in a bunch of numbers right here and click on sign up, it's going to say enter a valid email. So our email field has been successfully validated. Now let's validate our password field. And for the password field, I want to first of all check if the password field is empty. So password.trim. Then I just want to say the required. Then I'm going to scroll down, copy that p tag, paste that p tag underneath my password input. Now instead of errors.name, I'm going to say errors.password. Save that. When I click on sign up, you can notice right now the name field is required, the email field is required, the password field is required. Now we don't just want to stop at actually checking if the user tapped on the password input field. We also want to check if the password the user tapped on the input field is actually greater than 6 characters. Now we don't want to allow the user to submit a form that has a password less than 6 characters. So I'm going to say else if the password dot the length of the password is less than 6 characters. Now if that's true, then I'm going to say new errors dot password is going to be password must be at least 6 characters. I'm going to save that. Now when I click on sign up, you're going to see right now the password field is required, but when I type in a password that's not up to 6 characters, it's going to say the password must be at least 6 characters. Now the last thing we are going to do is add that little border red at the bottom of our input to signify that the input is in an error state. So I'm going to scroll down to my input field right here. I'm going to cut this off, put it inside the backticks, then I'm going to say $. Then I'm going to paste that in here because I want to add another style to it. Then I'm going to add that style. I'm going to say border red 500. Then it's going to be border bottom 3. I'm going to save that. Then you can see in our name field we have a little border right here. Now we want this border to only be displayed when there's an error in this input. So we're going to check first. I'm going to cut this off for now. Then I'm going to say $errors dot name. If there's an error in our name input, then I want to apply this class s. I want to apply a class that's just going to be border gray 200, which is the background color of our input. I'm going to save that. You can see right now when we don't have an error, it's going to apply this style right here of border gray of 200, which is the background color of this input. So when we have an error, when I click on sign up, it's going to apply this border red of 500. So I'm going to do the same thing for the email and the password input. I'm just going to copy this style right here. I'm going to scroll down. Then I'm going to paste that here. Scroll down to my password input. Then I'm going to paste that here. Now when I click on sign up, you can see right now those little borders are being applied to our input. Now we have written all the codes we need to add validation to our inputs. So how do we now instruct the form that when a user types in on all their inputs correctly, how do we instruct the form that it's okay to actually submit that data? Now we only want to submit this form if the errors object, this errors object is empty. So we're going to check every value in this error object if they are empty. So I'm going to come down here. Then I'm going to say if new errors dot name is empty, which means it doesn't have any value. So I'm going to negate this if it doesn't have any value. And also I'm also going to check if the new errors that the email has no value. I'm going to negate that. Yeah, last I'm going to check if the new errors dot password has no value too. So I'm going to negate that. Now this if statement is only going to run when the errors dot name value is empty, which means we don't have any error in our name value. Errors dot email value is empty, which means we don't have any email errors, and errors dot password is empty, which means we don't have any errors in our password. If we have error in just one of these values right here, this if statement is not going to run. So all of them have to return an empty error string before this can run, which means we don't have any error in our input. So I'm going to say alert form submitted. Now after the form is submitted, I want to empty these inputs, the name, the email, and the password input. So down here, I'm going to say I want to set the name state to an empty string. Then set the email state to an empty string. Then set the password state to an empty string. Then down here, this is where you can now send this form data to a backend. Now this is where you're going to write the logic to actually send this form data to the backend after you complete all your front-end form validation. Now let's actually test our form. When I click on sign up, you're going to say the name field is required, the email field is required, and the password field is required. So when I type in here, say Emmanuel, click on sign up, you're going to notice that our email and our password border is not red at the bottom. What's happening? Okay, yeah, for the password I'm using else.password, and for this one, instead of else.email, I'm using else.email. else.email. So let's do that again. So when I click on sign up, you're going to notice that the name field is required. So when I type in Emmanuel here, click on sign up, you're going to notice that the email field is required. So when I type in on this email, say I type in an email that's not a valid email address, I just typed in a number there. There's going to say the enter a valid email address. So I'm going to enter a valid email address, e@gmail.com. Click on sign up. It's going to say the password field is required. So when I type in a password that's not up to 6 characters, you're going to say the password must be at least 6 characters. So when I type in a password that's greater than 6 characters and click on sign up, you're going to notice right now it's going to say form submitted. When I click on OK, our input is being set back to empty strings. Now that's it for this tutorial. If you enjoyed the tutorial, smash on the like button and leave a random comment below. It's going to help the YouTube algorithm to push this video to more people who are going to find it helpful. And if you've not subscribed, ensure you do that and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss my next tutorial. I'll see you in the next video.